Well, welcome, Kim. Good to see you there. There's a few more people maybe going to wander in, but we're going to get started here in the interest of time. I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Scott, for inviting me, and always welcome an opportunity to talk about mindfulness and to share the practice. We were going to do maybe about a 5-minute arrival, and I'm going to shorten that a little bit just so that we get the practices in later. I think what I'll start is just asking you to sort of get yourself in a mindful position, which really means mostly sitting upright, not uptight, relaxed. Maybe your hands and palms down in your lap and your feet flat on the ground, just arriving here in this space. You know, leaving behind whatever you were doing before or whatever you have to do later, and really just trying to bring yourself to the present moment and just be right here, right now. And maybe just taking a few breaths in that spirit of leaving behind nothing else to do, nowhere to go. For this next 40 minutes, right here and right now. And maybe lowering your gaze or closing your eyes if that feels all right. I'm just going to read a poem that sort of sets the tone for this practice that we have in front of us today with mindfulness. You may have heard it before. It's called The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And with that, maybe just coming back into this space here. And knowing that we can always and readily call on that sort of arrival practice wherever we are, coming to anything new, a new conversation, a new class, a phone call, just being in that space, not somewhere else, and that we can do that. Might be a good time to start the PowerPoint. Really just have that to keep us on track here. And welcome to the new participant. So the title of this presentation is From Reaction to Response, Mindfulness in Trying Times. And I'd like to start by reading a quote from an article called The Pandemic is a Portal that came out early in March by the author Arundhati Roy. She says, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. And that came out in early March before all the other things we have now as a collective force come up with to fight against. So it was right on track and even more so. But mindfulness is a way that we can imagine these dark times as a portal and as a way forward making choice. And so today the practices and the discussion that we're going to have is in service to that end, of seeing these trying times as a portal for good. And so we'll get started. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time defining mindfulness. I really want to spend more time practicing, but just in the interest of making sure everybody is on the same page with the definitions that I'm using, I'd like to move to the next slide, actually 2 slides from now. I forgot to tell you to go to the guest house. So one more. Awesome. So there are so many ways to talk about mindfulness and so many definitions, but I think in many ways this pares it down to what matters to us right now. That's okay. It's the previous slide. So I can read it from here while he's getting it up. So mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening right now without wishing it were different, enjoying the pleasant without holding on when it changes, which it will, and being with the unpleasant without fearing it will always be this way, which it won't. James Baraz, an author and meditation teacher. And in other words, and I have in a nutshell there, really mindfulness does 3 things. It prevents us from ruminating about the past, endlessly planning the future, and avoiding what is present. Essentially, it keeps us in the present moment, and it allows us to meet whatever comes with open curiosity. A paraphrase of a Rilke quote that I like is, "Things come toward me to meet and be met." And mindfulness is a skillful way to do that. Not worry about what happened before, fret about what's about to happen, or ignore what's happening right now. And that's really what mindfulness is. Why should we practice mindfulness in these trying times? The next slide, please. And always, because we look like this, right? And this is sort of how it feels in these times. And when stress overwhelms us in this way, prompting us to become upset at things we might later regret, it's a sign that our amygdala, the brain's trigger for fight or flight, has hijacked its executive centers in the prefrontal cortex. The primitive part of the brain makes us react in the same way every time the situation comes up, which means that we can sometimes behave in ways that are less professional. I'm not sure if you can all relate to that, but I can. We go straight to reaction instead of choosing our response. The next slide, please. So there's all sorts of scientific benefits for mindfulness. They range from better decision-making, heightened immune system, less stress, less anxiety. It makes people look younger, feel younger, provides emotional regulation and emotional flexibility. The list goes on and on. But this evidence that I want to share with you on this page is probably the most powerful evidence I've ever had that mindfulness works. So I was able to spend a 2-day training at the San Quentin State Prison in California in 2018 to teach mindfulness in prisons. Their program was called Guiding Rage into Power. And they met once a week for 52 weeks for the whole year for 3 hours during the week and practiced throughout. It was called Guiding Rage into Power because they considered this top quote at the top of the page, mindfulness is a pause, the space between stimulus and response. That's where choice lies. They considered that space between stimulus and response the moment of imminent danger. That's what they called it. And there were 30 men in the group that we spent the day with. And at the end of the day, they gave us these numbers. Of those 30 men, they were sentenced to a combined number of 933 years in prison. Most of them were in for life. Their motto or their slogan on their t-shirts and in their program is free yourself while you're inside, which mindfulness did for many of them. 8 minutes and 14 seconds was the combined amount of time. So 30 men for 8 minutes and 14 seconds within that moment of stimulus and response, committed crimes that led them to 933 years in prison. It's just kind of mind-boggling. And we understand this, right? Because we go 0 to 60 and we respond when we react to things, and that's when we get in trouble. Hopefully not prison, but definitely it gets us in our own version of trouble. Of the 6 years that the program was in place at that time, this would probably be a higher stat today. 113 of those men had been both released from prison and had graduated from the program. Most of them were still inside, as I said, but 113 had been released and had finished this guiding rage into power. 0% recidivism rate in 6 years. And the recidivism rate in California is 67%. We spent the whole second day with one of those 113 men. He was my age, which at the time was early 50s, and he had been in prison for 41 years, all of his life. And he was positive he would never get out or would never be okay on the outside. And he spent the whole day teaching us how mindfulness changed him and turned him around. So this is the most powerful proof I have. And on the outside, I would also never, as an English teacher, would I exaggerate in saying that it's life-changing. It changed my life as well. A quote that I really love in this context is, we can't change our experience, but we can change our relationship to it. One of my favorite teachers, Vinny, I was just listening to a talk by him last night, Vinny Ferraro, and he said, we have the capacity to come into right relationship with reality, with experience. And so right relationship is skillful, kind, compassionate, all the ways that mindfulness cultivate for us. So with that, I say we practice a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind just going to the next slide. Scott, thanks. Okay, good. So the three things that we're going to spend a minute practicing today are compassion, deep listening, and loving kindness. These are just a few of many mindfulness practices that are helpful in this in these trying times, but they're ones that I think are sort of foundational, where we can start and where in some ways we need to start. Compassion is the first thing we're going to do. We'll do a little journaling exercise. Deep listening is a small group exercise. And loving kindness is actually a practice, a meditation. So if you have pen and paper handy, and even if you don't, I'd like you to consider these questions. And I might open it up just for a comment or two, since we have such a good, short, small number here to share. The first question in compassion, and maybe go to the next slide for this. Thank you. The first question I have for you, and either write your response or just consider it for a minute or two, is when someone that you know and love is in distress, you know, they're having a really hard time, they're stressed out, they're freaking out, whatever that looks like to you, and they come to you for help. What do you do? How do you respond? What do you say? What's your tone of voice? What do you do? What does that look like for you when someone comes to you who you love, when they're in need? Just spend a few minutes either writing or just thinking about that. And the second question is, now you're that person. You're in a state of heightened distress. Something has gone wrong terribly. And the question is to turn that question back to yourself. How do you respond to yourself? What do you say to yourself? How do you treat yourself? What do you do in that moment. And then the third and final question is just to ask yourself if there's any difference between how you respond and speak and treat the other person in pain and how you treat yourself. And if anyone would care to share, really the answer to the third question. Is there a difference? If anyone would care to share that, you could either unmute and speak or put something in the chat real quick.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, Kim.
My answer is that yes, there is a difference. And I'm kind of shocked by it, actually. But I am definitely not in the moment. And I am forecasting, if I'm in distress, then I have already leaped forward in time and imagined the worst.
Yeah.
So that's eye-opening.
Yeah, it's a good awareness that this was supposed to bring awareness to your compassion, and it did. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, anyone else? You're welcome to participate, Scott, if you want. Yeah.
Unmute.
Oh, there you go.
Little delay. Well, briefly, the thing that struck me was that when people come to me, there's a more positive energy, sense of empathy, want to help them. But when it happens to myself, I tend to isolate and go inward. My self-esteem drops a bit, and panic. It's kind of there's a light response to others and a dark response to myself.
Love that. Thank you. Scott and I are in the same room. That's why it had the little echo. But thank you. It's just so interesting to bring this to our awareness and bring this to our attention. I have a couple of quotes here that sort of speak to some of the things I feel when I do this exercise, and maybe they'll resonate. Regarding myself, this is a quote from Brene Brown, who's a popular social scientist. It's hard to practice compassion when we're struggling with our own authenticity or when our own worthiness is off balance. So much of our work as teachers or artists or parents, whatever we are, is caring for others. And if we haven't, like this graphic shows, if we haven't sort of watered our own seeds, we aren't as good, or we don't show up as well for the other people, and we're not as present for them. I like that you called that into your response, Kim, because when we're not present for ourselves or for others, we're not the best possible vessel of compassion. Sometimes people just need you to be there, not to fix it. Another quote that I just love, and this was if you're interested, I just heard it in the 10% Happier podcast with Dan Harris. This week, he interviewed the Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, who said it's not enough to go cultivating compassion without routing out the cruelty. It's not enough. We have to rout out the cruelty. We have to rout out the hatred and indifference. And that's for both ourselves or for others, so we have to first become aware of it and then get rid of it in order to really cultivate compassion. So with that, I'd like to do another practice that kind of gives us a different way to illustrate compassion. So maybe go to the next slide so you can see the instructions here. This one is a deep listening, it's called a deep listening exercise. And it is, it was created, not from the ground up, but it's a mindfulness exercise from a famous teacher called Sharon Salzberg. And the idea of deep listening is you'll get a chance, we'll break the two participants into one group, and Scott and I will do the same here, just verbally. But the exercise goes this way. Each person gets 2 minutes to speak and 2 minutes to listen. So when it's your turn to speak, you get to just speak genuinely from your heart and without interruption. And I will give you a prompt right when we start. But just really speak freely and from your heart to the extent that that feels right and comfortable. The listener, your role is to just hold that space with compassion for the partner, to speak without judging, fixing, offering suggestions, responses, nothing. Really just with compassion, deeply listening and caring about what that person is saying. Sound good? Anybody have questions about that? So I'm going to ask Scott to put us in small groups, and I will also ask Scott, I don't know how to run a Mac, so Scott gets to do all this stuff, but to let you know when the 2 minutes is up and when to start so that you know your time. So you'll get 2 minutes to speak, that person listens, then I will give a pause, and then we'll come back and reverse the roles. Okay, so before you go into the room, two things. The question, well, really the one thing is all I want to tell before we do this. The question that you're asked to respond to in whatever way lands for you or feels right is a tribute to, and I'll read the quote later, but it's a tribute to an exercise by a famous meditation teacher and poet that you probably have heard of, Thich Nhat Hanh, whose life is currently coming to a close. He's stopped eating, and he's 94 years old and just had what he called his 94th continuation day. It was his birthday. But just sort of sending a nod out to him. This is an exercise I learned from him. The question that I'm asking you to respond to for 2 minutes, once you get into the breakout room, is what's not wrong? That's it. What's not wrong? So if Scott will break you into rooms, once you get in there, we'll give you a timer and tell you when the first speaker starts. So you might decide who gets to speak first. Maybe it's the person who got up the earliest in the morning, or whatever is easiest for you. Oh no. Kim and you, yeah. Okay, so Kim, you and Scott are gonna be a part of a group. If that's okay with you?
That's fine.
It's not letting him join it for some reason, probably because he's a host. You can do, well, yeah, just talk right now in front of me. That's perfect because there's only two of us. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Who wants to be the first speaker?
Okay. I'll go.
Okay, Kim, go for it. What's not wrong?
Okay. So there are some things that are not wrong, like my family, amidst everything, is doing well. My grandchildren are learning. They are in school partially, and but at home mostly. And they are learning and thriving and doing well. They have a roof over their heads. Their mom is a healthcare worker, and she works with COVID patients, and she's doing well. So that is working. My son is he's still loves his job and loves the people that he's working with. So that's working. And I have a roof over my head. I can work from home. So I have not missed a beat since everything changed and became virtual. So I am so grateful for that. That is not wrong. My job is not wrong. I love what I do. That is not wrong. I get to teach, which was a lifetime goal that I have had. That is not wrong. And I'm working on creative projects, so that is not wrong. I am staying in deep contact with friends. We meet via Zoom regularly. So there's things that are not wrong, and I am slowly but surely adjusting to the new normal. Reluctantly and hesitantly, but still adjusting. I am making progress. And so that is not wrong. I'm still living and breathing and moving, and that is also not wrong. I'm happy just to be taking these workshops this afternoon and learning. That is a very right thing for me. So
That's awesome. That time just went up, but my sound was off. You did a great job of filling 2 minutes. So now we just pause, and this goes a little differently if you're looking face to face at one another in a room, but we just pause and sort of take in and appreciate what we just heard. And sort of Scott's, I would invite Scott, thank her for what she just shared. And we sort of go in that way. So you want to try to, Scott, or do you want to maybe come over here and speak to her?
Why don't you turn the volume down a little bit? And if we just do that for now.
Okay.
That's right.
Or even mute myself too, right? Maybe would work.
Okay, the echo gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, Scott, I will time it again, and you get to say your 2 minutes worth of what's wrong. Ready, go.
What's not wrong is I also am really thankful and grateful to have a job that I love, that I can actually continue to participate in and work on during these times. Got amazing colleagues and great boss. I'm grateful for the support that I get. That's not wrong from the college and Susan specifically. And I'm thankful for my health and being healthy. That's not wrong. I'm still COVID-free and taking care of myself. My house, I love my house. That's not wrong. It's a place that I've enjoyed and felt safe in for several years. Just even though it's been difficult to kind of be isolated, it's wonderful to be in a house that I care about so much and just really feel comfortable in. It's not wrong that my family is still safe. My family in Lincoln and Los Angeles and Florida, they've all been taking care of themselves and looking after one another, and that's not wrong. Also, we have the opportunity to be creative and be part of projects that bring creative people together and support one another, and to provide opportunities for people to share their work and to teach and to learn. That's not wrong. The fact that, the friends that I remained close to are rocks for me. And part of this isolation too, I feel like I've reached out to some of them more. And that's not wrong.
Time's up. If you want to sort of conclude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. gonna turn my volume back up here. Yeah, thank you. I have no idea how to do that. Yeah, okay. Thank you both very much. Just in the interest of time, I'm curious to know, or really more for you to know, what that felt like to be the speaker that was completely heard for 2 minutes, and what it was like to listen and just hold that space for that other person for 2 minutes. Also, maybe what it was like to answer the question, what's not wrong? Any observations you'd like to share real quick?
Well, I enjoyed the opportunity to answer that question. I've seen it pop up a couple of times on social media, and I was just glad to answer it. And it just felt like I was validated. You know, just being able to say whatever it was I wanted to say in that moment, whatever came to me, and knowing that whatever I said would be okay. That was very, it was very freeing. It was freeing, exciting, and calming at the same time. I'm
Good.
not sure how that occurred, but it did. And I felt a high sense of value, like this is a moment that I can take and share something that's important.
I love that. Thank you.
Mhm.
It's so good.
For me, just briefly, it's kind of interesting because Kim is a good friend of mine. So to hear what's going good in her life was specifically good for me. I mean, made me happy, as opposed to just someone that I would run into at a workshop. So that gave a heightened sense to it, and made me lean forward even more so, to hear her share that with me. And then to say it myself it was, I don't know, trying to put it into words. And they start as like feelings, and then trying to like pinpoint the concreteness within those feelings was an interesting challenge.
It's so important, and so it's just so good to be able to hear what's going well. And for you both, you so freely had a lot of things to say, which I love. Sometimes people struggle a little, but I've never had anybody say there's nothing they could say to that. And in these times, sometimes we get in a deep dark hole and think maybe there isn't anything that isn't wrong. So it's just really a beautiful thing to call awareness to what's not wrong. That if we had a ton of time, I would also extend into a gratitude practice, because that's essentially what that is. But that's one of the healthier mindfulness things you can do that has literally been proven to change your outlook on life, your brain trajectory, your everything. Because we're seeing the good rather than just emphasizing the bad, which is definitely something worth doing today. So more conversation if we had time, but just calling attention to your participation in that process. Even also what it felt like maybe to listen, like Scott was mentioning, to hear Kim's story and to just hold that for her rather than commenting or saying something back to her. And then bringing that into your practice or your life. And then we only have about 5 minutes left here, but I'd like to just lead you into loving kindness practice, which is probably the next slide if you care to get back on the slides, although it doesn't have any content on it. But I'd like to just conclude with this, and I will end the practice. This is a guided practice, and I will end it by reading a poem that sort of is a way to think about what we've done here today. So loving kindness is a practice that we do. It's a mental state, really, an attitude. It's a friendliness. It's a setting of intention to bring goodwill to yourself and to others. So it's a way of using the compassion that we've sort of practiced with so far, but extending it starting with ourselves and extending it out in kind of a fellowship sort of way. And the idea is really just to cultivate a genuine wish for well-being and happiness for yourself and others. So for this practice, I invite you to, again, take a mindful posture, which most importantly, I would say your feet flat on the floor, an upright posture, eyes closed, or just the gaze to a neutral spot if that feels more comfortable. But to a place where you're feeling both dignity and ease. And really just arriving in this quiet space, trying to remember that you have, for these next few minutes, nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. And remembering that this is a practice of intention. It may not feel completely normal or authentic, and that's okay. It's a practice that we learn to do and that we learn to cultivate. It starts with ourself, and what we do is I will be offering phrases of goodwill and saying them out loud and inviting you to picture the person that I suggest in your mind's eye, and also in your mind's eye saying those phrases to that person. It's important, I always think, to start with ourselves in this practice. So try to just relax deep inside and really sense into how this feels to make these wishes. And knowing that if your mind wanders at any time during this practice, that's exactly what your mind is designed to do. And the invitation is always just to kindly bring it back. So with yourself in mind, saying these phrases and really sort of sensing into how they feel. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. And sort of sensing into that and shifting now to someone you love, someone who's in your corner. You know, someone that when you think about it, it just brings up good feelings. Imagine that person right here in front of you, sitting here ready to receive these wishes. And in your mind's eye, with that person in front of you, looking in that person's eye, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Shifting now to someone who has a more neutral role in your life. Maybe it's the person who delivers your mail or the barista. It doesn't even have to be someone you know, or maybe you don't even know that person's name. Someone that you just maybe see as a role rather than someone you stop and talk to. If you can picture that person in your mind and sense into what it would feel like to say these same things and have these same wishes for that person. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. And may you live with ease. And just noticing if there's any shift in how you see that person. And then moving on to this one more individual. This is a practice of seeing if we can bring this same goodwill and these same wishes to someone that is maybe difficult in our lives. The practice is always not to bring the most difficult person to mind, but maybe someone who's just mildly irritating. And just see if you can genuinely wish this person well. May you be happy. Sensing into what it feels like wishing that person to be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. And may you live with ease. And sensing into what that feels like, and knowing that it doesn't mean that you have to forgive or condone or erase anything that was difficult about that person, but just noticing what it would feel like to send this kind of goodwill that person's way. And then concluding by just imagining all sentient beings, expanding this love and awareness and this kindness out just beyond this circle of people to all beings, people, plants, animals, and imagining what it would be like if we could wish and sense into this kind of goodwill. May we all be happy. May we all be healthy. May we all be safe. And may we all live with ease. And taking just a moment or two, a breath or two, to feel in your body what this feels like to do a practice of loving kindness. And when you're ready, just opening your eyes and returning back to this space. Where I was going to close with reading a poem, and now I don't find it. Here it is. I did find it. So I'm just going to close with this, and I know we're just a few seconds over. This is a real short poem. But it's sort of, mindfulness is a state to cultivate. You know, these are things that we can do both in the formal practice that we just did, where you're sitting with your eyes closed, or in the informal practice of taking these qualities out into life. And this poem sort of is, seems like a fitting way to end. The Thing Is by Ellen Bass. To love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands. Your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weights you down like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief, you think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold your hand like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. So thank you. Kim, you're the star student. Thank you for being here. It was very wonderful to share this experience with both you and Scott, and I just am really grateful to have had the opportunity. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic. It was just a
Okay.
wonderful session.
Oh, so good. Thank you. You made it all worthwhile.
Thank you, Scott. Have a good evening, both of you.
Thank you so much.